Hi everyone, welcome back. All right, so let's take a look at where we've been. All right, so we're getting started with we're almost at the end of the month. Well, actually, no, we're at the end of the month, and up to this point, right, we've been just focusing most of our attention just to implementing the front end, right, the client side of a client server application. And we've been using technologies such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right, but all that running inside of a browser. And we've reached some of the limitations of just being able to run on the browser, right? So, for instance, we can't access the file system. We don't have access to a database, right? We have limited access to the network, and so we've seen some, what the repercussions of that, right? If we make any changes to a data structure, like creating new courses or deleting a module or updating an assignment, right? Even though we can change the state of the user interface, right, and it reflects in the user interface by updating re-rendering the screen, those changes are not permanent, right? When you refresh the screen or when you come back later next day, right, all those changes are gone. And that is, again, a consequence of the limitations of an application that exclusively runs on a browser. So today we're going to escape that limitation. Right? We're going to integrate with a process that runs outside of the server, outside of the browser, which is a server. Right? It's a process that runs from the console. Right? It's not running inside of a browser, so it doesn't have any of those limitations. It is just a regular program, right, that you run from a console program, right, a desktop application that has full access to the file system, network, right, database, and whatnot. Right. So we're going to be using Node.js, right, to learn how to create HTTP servers, right, and again, to be able to do all the things that we haven't been able to do from a user interface, right, and we're going to have to integrate these two pieces. Right? We're going to have the React JS application running inside of our browser. And then to escape the limitations, confinements of the browser, will establish an HTTP network communication with the server, right? And the server will be able to then work on behalf of the user interface. We'll need to learn how communication is handled, right? How we pass data back and forth between the client and the server, right? And then the server, right, learn about all the things that we can do that are available to us through the operating system. Okay, so let's see a plan for today. We're gonna get started on assignment 5, right? That we're gonna learn how to get started on creating servers, creating RESTful APIs, web APIs, right? And then how to integrate this with the user interface that we have so far. Right? Also, you might have worked already on on the first exam. I believe it's still available, and also it looks like some of you are struggling with the fourth assignment. So let's move the due date to be next Tuesday. So that should give you over the weekend, right, and be able to work on just a few more days. Right? So a little less than a week. And then even though we were moving the due date for assignment 4, right, we're going to get started with the material for assignment 5, right, which builds on the assignment that the fourth assignment, right. Okay, so that's the plan. And so looking ahead, right, we're going to be talking about server technology for the next couple of weeks. And so even though all the updates that we could not save on the browser, we're going to send them over to the server. We're going to maintain the state variables that we normally have in the front end. We're going to move a lot of those state variables to the server. Right? And once you are in the server, right, you could write to the file system to a database, but we're not going to do that. Right? We're going to learn how to manage data structures within the server, right, without actually writing them out either to a file system or database. That will come a little later, right? We'll learn how to integrate with the database so that we can make those changes permanent, right? And that will be in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so that's the plan going forward. Okay. All right, so let's get started and discuss the servers. Servers, right? Anyway, so the material should be available over here, okay, on week 9. All right, so we're going to be using Node.js as our API, right? Our tool to create our servers. So if you remember, this is the architecture that we are implementing. Right? We've been focusing, all our efforts at the first layer over here, the client layer, right? And implemented, HTML, CSS, JavaScript running on a browser. And today we're going to introduce how to build a server. Now, the server typically sits in between the user interface, right, and some more backend resources such as databases, file systems, network resources, and whatnot. So oftentimes this is referred to as the middle tier, the server being the in the middle between the user interface and the rest of the resources. And typically the communication through this is through HTTP. And so today we're going to learn how is it that we establish this communication. We're going to be using Node.js as the tool for creating these servers. Now we already have Node.js installed, right? That's what we've been using to implement the React.js application. And so today we're gonna learn much more on what can you do with Node.js. Right now we've been using it only as a server that hosts our React.js application. Right? We started with npm start, that starts the Node.js server, which is hosting our user interface application. Right? But today we're going to use Node.js again, right? But for implementing a server-side application. Right? We're going to write a lot of JavaScript code, but that is not going to run inside of a browser. Instead, it's going to run from the console, from the desktop. Okay. And so we're going to create a brand new project, right? A completely different directory, right? And in there, we're going to create a Node.js server application. It's very important. We already have a React.js project, right? It lives in its own folder. This new folder is entirely different, right? It's going to be a sibling, right, to the project that we already have, right? It's not going to be a sub project. So this is not a folder inside of already project that we have for React.js. No, right? This is going to be outside of that folder. We're going to create a completely different folder, right? And in there, we're going to create a completely different project. It's going to have its own source code, right? It's going to have its own Git repository, right? It's going to be deployed to an entirely different machine, right? A completely different server. The only relationship between our two projects is that they're going to talk to one another through HTTP, right? But they don't share any source code, right? They don't share any resource between them, right? They just establish communications between them, right? And then talk to one another and pass data across, right? But this is not a project inside of another project, a sub-project. These are entirely two different projects, right? Two different, entirely different processes, right? Running eventually, right? These are going to be deployed again to different remote machines, right? And our server is going to be running on, say, Render.js or Heroku, right? And our React.js application is going to be running on Netlify, right? And this could be, in separate, in opposite ends of the planet, right? And nevertheless, they're going to communicate using the internet, using the web, right? Sending HTTP requests amongst themselves, right? So this is a cheat sheet of what we're going to do. We're going to create a new directory. We're going to call it Canvas Node Server App, right? We're going to go in there and we're going to run npm init, okay? And in there, right, you can using Node.js, you can either create a file, like say a hello.js file, type in a couple of JavaScript code in there, right, and say, and then that file you can run it node hello.js. So node is an executable, right, that comes in when you install Node.js, right, that allows you to execute JavaScript outside of the browser, right? In this case, it's going to allow us to run, say, hello world, right? So console hello world. Now, some things that are going to be quite different when implementing code that runs in the browser and code that doesn't run in the browser, is that we've been using JavaScript, well, TypeScript really, and a particular vocabulary, TSX, which is a combination of JavaScript syntax, right, mixed in with HTML syntax, right? So on the server, we're not going to do any of that, right? We're not going to be implementing any user interface whatsoever, right? It's all going to be just plain old JavaScript, okay? No HTML, no attributes, right? No, there's no on click, right? There's no iterating over data structure to draw something on the screen. There is no screen, right? So in that way, these two processes that are going to integrate, right, the server and the React.js, they complement each other. Right? The user interface, the React.js user interface that we're running on the browser has a graphical representation, right, that interacts with the user with clicks and drags and draws things on the screen, right? But it doesn't have access to the file system, right? It doesn't have access to a database. Whereas this server application doesn't have a user interface. There is no graphical representation, right? It does not interact directly with the user, but it does have access to the file system and the network and the database. So they complement each other very well, right? Something that one can do, the other one can't, and vice versa, right? But they're going to collaborate where the client does things very well, but does other things poorly, right? The server is the opposite, right? It does all the things that the browser can't do, right? But it can't do a lot of the things that the browser can do, right? So they complement each other, and they need to integrate, talk to one another, so that they coordinate efforts, right, through the HTTP requests. Make sense? So that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to create an API. We're going to use the library Express, right? That it's going to allow us to create the event handlers, right? The server can receive these events that come in from the client. The client is going to send a request, right? It's going to send an HTTP request, and so on the servers we need to be able to write code that can listen for those incoming requests, right? And there's different types of requests depending on what you're doing. If you are retrieving data, if you're sending data, if you're changing data, if you're deleting data. So there are different types of requests, right? And they have specific names to them. So for instance, if you're retrieving data, it's called an HTTP GET request. Right? You're getting data from the server. If you are deleting, then it would be an HTTP delete, right? And the other two, the creating and the updating, is slightly different. If you're creating new content, typically it's an HTTP post, or if you're modifying something that exists on the server, it's an HTTP put. Okay, so we're going to be using two libraries, right, both on the client side and on the server, right, that know how to, from the client, how to send an HTTP get, post, put, delete, and on the server, we're going to use a library that knows how to receive, right, requests that are HTTP get requests, post requests, delete requests, and put requests, right? And so that's how they're going to talk to one another. The client initiates the request, sends the request over to the server. The server does some work, right? Maybe talks to the database, goes out to this network, the file system. It fulfills that request, right? And then it sends back a response. Sends back a response to the client. The client is kind of waiting for this response, right? And then the client, once it receives the response, it updates the user interface, to show some feedback that indeed the request was successful or not. Okay, so yeah, we're going to use on the server side, we're going to use the Express library, right, to be able to receive, get requests, put requests, delete requests, and so on and so forth, right? We're going to create an instance of this. We're going to, and then the library, right, uses the following syntax, right? You create an instance of the Express library, and then you can tell the server, hey, server, I want to listen for incoming HTTP GET request. So there's an app.get. There's app.put, app.post, app.put, delete, and so on and so forth, right? And then the requests come in through a URL, right? A universal resource locator, right? That whenever you navigate on the internet or the web, right? You type in a URL. So that URL, up to this point, that URL has been useful for retrieving graphical or screens or things that are user interface, right? So that's what we've been using the URLs, right, to retrieve content that is meant for consumption by a human being, right? A form, right? Some image, right? Some paragraph headers, and so on and so forth. All that content that we've been creating up to this point, all those URLs, right? Up to this point, on this first half of the semester, building the client and user interface, right? It's been meant for human consumption. Yes. This second half of the semester, right? We're going to learn, right, that URLs can also be used to retrieve content that is not necessarily meant for human consumption, right? Is more meant for inter-process communication, right? You have these two processes, the client and the server, talking to one another, right? And they need data, right? And the client needs data because it doesn't have access to a database, right? It doesn't have access to the file. The server needs to go fetch that, right? So the server needs to make that data available to the client, through some URL. We're going to use a URL. There's going to be a URL that allows you to retrieve a to-do list or delete a to-do, right? Or create a new to-do, right? Or retrieve courses, delete courses, update modules, delete assignments, and so on and so forth, right? So in each one of those commands, right, that you are deleting, updating, and creating and whatnot, this data is going to be mapped to a URL, right? And very much like the same syntax that we used on the client, where you can pass parameters, right? And that parameter can be parsed, right? And then you can configure the behavior in the user interface. Same thing in the server. The server also, right? This URL can have data embedded inside of the path, right, or the query or the body. Right? We can send it over to the server, and the server can then retrieve this data, right, and customize its behavior, right? So that's what we're going to be learning about all this week and the next. Okay. Recording. Okay. All right. So let's talk about servers. Right. So the focus, the first half of the semester, the focus was the user interface, right? And now we're going to focus more on on the server side, right? And we're going to learn how integration between processes work, right? And this integration is a very important skill to learn, right? Where we want to know how different servers can work together, right, to accomplish a common task or a common goal, right? For instance, you might have a company that needs to collaborate with all sorts of vendors and customers and suppliers, right? It needs to interface with all these systems, all these processes, right? And throughout the computer science history, there's been many strategies that we have used throughout the last 40, 50 years on how is that we can integrate all these various processes, right? And so but lately, right, in say the last 20, 30 years, right, there has been a very prominent use of an open protocol, right, that has proved to be very, very useful, which is HTTP. HTTP has become a very, very simple way to establish communication between multiple processes, right? In particular, the client-server architecture, right, where one process is an application running on a browser, and then the other process is a server running on some desktop, right? And they can use HTTP to go back and forth, sending requests and responding to the client. Now, the particular implementation that we care about, right, is that the client is a React.js client, right, running JavaScript on a browser, and our server is a Node.js server that uses the Express library, right, to receive HTTP requests, right? So that's what we're going to be doing, but certainly there are many other instances or implementations of this, right? The Node.js server could be instead a C# server, it could be a Python server, it could be it could be Java, it could be all sorts of server instances can be implemented over here, right? Also, instead of using React.js, right, we could be using Vue.js, Angular. There's plenty of things, or it could be something that is not even a browser, right? This could be a game console, right? This could be a mobile application. So not necessarily even a browser. It could be another server. You could have multiple servers talking to each other, right? Exchanging data with HTTP, right? So, and this can extend, not just have two of these, but you can have multiple of these talking to one another, browsers talking to other browsers, right? Node.js servers talking to other servers, right? And just crisscross, a web of network communications. And HTTP has proven to be a very easy way to establish, this communication, very, very cheaply, right? It's trivial to create these communications, as we'll learn today, right? So first of all, we need to make sure that Node.js is installed, right? That you have a fairly new version, and again, we're going to be using Node.js, but a lot of the topics and practices and strategies that we're going to be introducing today and the next couple of weeks, right? They're very similarly applicable or uh, are also relevant, right? If you are using a different server, right? If you're using Java or C# or whatnot, right? A lot of the same concepts that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks are also applicable in those technology stacks. So I already have Node.js installed, right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to create a directory where we're going to host our new process, right? Our new server. So let's do that. I'm going to bring the terminal up. Let's bring it over. Here's my server. Can you see my server? Okay. All right, let's see, where am I? I'm going to go to NEU. We go to 2024. I'm going to go to fall. And I'm going to go into CS 5610. There we go. And so here's where we have been spending most of our time, right? This is the project that is hosting our React application, right? And so we'll still be using it, right? That's still going to be one of the processes talking to the server, right? And so we're going to create another one, right? But for the server, for the Node.js server, I just want to make sure, right, that you do not create the new directory that I'm going to create. Do not create it inside of the web application, right? If not, right, you're going to have to move it out later on, right? It's going to be a mess. You're ruin your Git repository for React web app. All right, so please make sure that you do not create the server file or directory inside of your React application, right? So let's create a new directory. Use the same name, but instead of this being a React web application, it's going to be a Node server application, right? And I'm going to name it the same, the same course name, right? And the same term, right? So that creates the directory. I'm going to go in there, the Node server, amp cs. In here, notice that it's empty. There's nothing in there. I'm going to do an npm init, which is going to initialize this project. Okay, and by default, it's going to name the project using the name of the directory. I'm just going to choose, yeah, that's what I want. So I'm just going to go through the default configuration. So description, this is an HTTP server integrating with a React front end. Right, so the entry point, that's fine. Test command, we don't have test. Git repository, we don't have one just yet. We'll create one in a minute. Keywords, author, Jose Annunziato. License, okay. So what it does is that it creates a package.json file, right? Notice that it's very similar right, this package.json file is the same package file, well, not same, but it plays the same role as the project that we've been using throughout the semester, the Canvas web application. Right, if you remember, oops, if we do an ls on that folder, remember there is a package JSON in the Canvas React web app as well. See that? That tells us that this a project that we've been using for the Canvas React web application is a Node.js application, right? It's just that it implements a user interface. For this case, we're not going to have a user interface. Okay? So we have that. Let's keep going. So let's create a hello.js file. We can already open this project with our favorite code editor. So I'm just going to there's our code. I'm going to create a new window. And so these are two windows. Where one window is going to be for editing the source code of our React application. We're going to have a separate window and say new window, right? And we're going to open up our new Node.js application. So we're going to say open folder, and we're going to navigate to the folder we just created. It's this one, right? That one. Yeah, so open. The only thing that's in there, it's package.json. Perfect. Okay. And so in here already, we can create, say, hello.js. So hello.js. And in here, we can write just plain old JavaScript file, right? JavaScript content in here. So if we say, console log, hello world. Okay. And we should be able to run it from the console. Right, so we can say ls, there's our hello.js. We can run it just with node, so node hello. There it is, it says hello world. So basically it's just a desktop application. That's all Node is, right? Node is just an engine, a runtime engine that can execute JavaScript files, okay? Now, obviously what you won't see here in our hello, oops, where is it? What you won't see in here is code that renders user interface, right? So no divs, no headers, no paragraphs, no clicks, right? Nothing like that, because again, we're not running a front end, right? That's the React application that we have been building for the last couple of weeks, right? All right, so let's see. React. Okay, that's our front end. Let me move this here. There it is. Okay, so we have that. So now we're gonna focus on creating the integration, right? We want to make sure that this server that we are building, right, is going to be able to integrate with our React application, right, that we already have. And to do that, we're going to use this library, the Express library, right? So we can install it from within here, right, from the terminal inside of our code editor, right, in our console, or we could use the command line, right? It's up to you what you prefer, right? So I'm just going to use the command line here in the terminal in our code IDE. So we can say npm install express. And so that's going to install an Express library, and we'll see that it makes an entry in our package.json file. It's very important, right, that the dependencies are listed in our dependencies property. This was just added, right? It wasn't there when we just installed it, and it displays us right there. Okay, this is important because when we deploy this on a server, the server is going to open up our package.json and see that for our project to work, it's going to have to install Express, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to run npm install, and that's going to read the dependencies in package.json, and it's going to install all the libraries that are listed here in the dependencies. Very, very important. All right, so now when we have that, let's create a little hello world, right, that can respond with just some little text, right? So the way we do that, right, on the server, let's put this here in the middle. So on the server, we're going to create a server file, and we're going to call it app.js. You can call it whatever you want, right? I'm going to call it app.js, right? And the only reason I call it app.js is to kind of mimic what we did in the user interface. So the entry point in the user interface is the app.js file. Here, so I'm following the same naming convention. So this is going to be the entry point of our server application. So first, we're going to bring in Express, an instance of Express, and notice that I'm using an older syntax, require. See that? Require is the equivalent of import. So import is a much modern syntax for importing libraries and components, right, into our source code, right? So this is using an older syntax. It's called CommonJS, right, that allows it to do the same thing, right? Import libraries. In a minute, we're going to switch over to the newer version in a minute. So we'll do that. We'll convert it into the ES6 modules, right? But for now, I just wanted to show you this syntax. It's the only time you'll see this in our source code, in our course, right? And we're going to switch over to import in a minute, and then never again we're going to use require. Nevertheless, it's good to see at least once in your life, right? If you take a look at some older source code, you'll still find require, right? Also, if you're doing some low-level stuff, also require will be required. Okay, so we have the Express. We're going to create a new instance of the library. So there it is. So app here is an instance of the Express library, and then we're going to just have a little hello world. We're going to say app.get, right, and say hello. So basically, what we're doing here is we're saying we're going to be listening for incoming requests, right? And this is going to be the URL. So the URL is going to be, http:// the IP address of this server followed by whatever path we have here. So this one just displays the path after the base URL, which is, HTTP and then the IP address, right? Or the name of the machine and things like that. And then, the first slash, that's it. That's the first slash, hello. Right? And then what it has to be, it's going to be a get, right? So remember, there's four or five different types of requests. There's get, post, put, delete. There's a couple more that we're not going to be using. So this one say, you're going to send a request, a get request, right, to that path, and here we can tell the server what should happen, right, when that request comes in. And so what we do here is that we provide a function like that, right? So notice that this is a function, right, that takes two arguments, right, and then the body of the function here, right? And now embedding the function like this, like a lambda syntax, right, that this function has no name. It's a very common syntax. Right? There's no point in declaring a function and then passing a reference here, right? Since this function is not going to be used ever again, right? It's only a reference in this declaration for this path. Okay. So what this function do is that it receives references to two objects here. So one of them is the request object and the response object. Now the names of the variables don't matter, right? But the position do matter, right? The first argument is the request. This is all the information coming from the client, right? Whether it's a browser client or a game console or a mobile application that is sending us the HTTP request, right? All the meta information about that request would be in here, the request, right? We'll see that in a minute how that works, right? And then the second argument is an object called that represents the response, which allows us to generate a response here from the server. So the request, it has information that we could use maybe for parameterizing or customizing the behavior, right? Whereas the response, right, allows us to send back some data, after doing some work, right? In the body, we do some work, right? Please mute. So after some computation here on the server, maybe accessing some file system, making some database queries, blah, blah, blah. Once we have the data, we can send back the result of our very complicated computation. Here, we're just sending back a hard-coded text of hello world. Okay. And finally, we need to start listening start up the server, right, and listen for incoming requests, right, and get into this like infinite loop of forever waiting for requests to come in, right, and then try to look at the URL that comes in and map it right to one of these handlers. So this is handling the incoming request that maps to hello. So the way we do that is that we say app listen, and we say what port do we want to listen at, right? So here we are listening at port 3000. There's thousands of ports that you can choose from, but this is a very, very common port that developers, Node.js developers, we're known to gravitate around this particular port, and different communities with different servers, kind of use different port numbers. Like if you're a Java developer, a very popular port is 8000 or 8080, right? But for Node.js, 3000 or even 4000 is a very common port. Actually, no, the 3000, if you remember, 3000 is the one that is used for our React application, which I think it's running here. See that? This localhost 3000. Our React application is running on a Node.js server that is listening at port 3000. So we can't use 3000. It needs to be a different one. So we'll say 4000 is also very popular. Right. Okay, so we're ready. We can start the server here. We can say node and then app.js, and that starts the server. Notice that before we ran it, and immediately it displayed something here. It's not displaying anything. That means that it's waiting for incoming requests. So let's help it, right? It wants a request to come in here, right? So let's do that. And we can go here and do the number of my machine, the IP address is 001:4000, right? So that's the root. That's the base URL, right? That will talk to my local server at port 4000, and then followed by some path. And the only path that my server knows about, right, is this one, right? That starts with an hello, right? So let's do that, /hello. And there is hello world. So yeah, so that is what my server is listening, right, and it's responding over here with hello world. That's exactly what it's responding, hello world, right? Okay, so yeah, so there it is. So there we have the simplest of servers. It doesn't do much, right? It just does some simple hello. Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right, let's continue. All right, so another tool that we're going to be installing is Nodebon. So Nodebon is a tool that allows us to automatically restart the server if any source file changes, right? If you've noticed, right, when we do implementation in our React application, when we do a change on a file and we save, immediately that change takes effect and we can see the results in the user interface. So we want to have that same kind of behavior up on the server. And to do that, we're going to use a Nodebon, right? So Nodebon is going to allow us to start the same server, right? Instead of using Node, we're going to use Nodebon app.js, right? And what happens is that any changes that you make to the file, Nodebon is going to be listening for these changes and it'll restart the server, right? So I've already installed Nodebon, and so here's an example of how to do it, whether it's Windows or on Mac. You might need to use sudo, right? And it's installed globally, meaning Nodebon is available everywhere, right? In your operating system. So I'm going to start Nodebon. So here's my server. My server is running. I'm going to stop it. And so instead of Node, I'm going to use Nodemon, like that, right? And it starts up. As far as we're concerned, there are no changes there. If I refresh, I still get the same hello world. But now, if I make changes, right? Hello world, right? Life is good, right? So if I save that, notice that the server restarts. See that? So that if I refresh this, the changes took effect immediately, right? As opposed to having stopping and restarting the server. Okay. So that's for hello. Let's create another request that maps to the root of the URL. Meaning, if you just go to, you type in the URL, just the IP address, right? And then, the port number, but you don't provide any path whatsoever. So it's convenient to have a response that is the default response, right? So for instance, slash, right? So for instance, let's do that. We'll say, app.get, and we'll map it to that. And we'll say, requests, and we'll respond saying something like, welcome to web development. So save that. And I think I have one too many parentheses here. There we go. And notice that if there's an error, it'll tell you if there's an error. It'll crash the server. Right? It'll wait until you fix it. When you save that, right, the server restarts with no problem, right? So if I go back here, right, we have this map to hello. If we refresh, still returns the same thing. But now, what if I don't say anything? So notice that it's going to the default, right? Welcome to web development, which is this one. So this is the default root path, right? That we want to map it to something so that if it, if you forgot to type something, at least you have a backup that it prints something to tell you that at least it's running. Okay. Okay. Right. So using CommonJS, which is an older syntax, we're going to switch over to ES6. Right? ES6, it allows us to use the more modern, import, right, as opposed to the require, right? So the require is a little older. That's the CommonJS syntax. So instead, we're going to switch over to the modules, right, which is the formal name for the ES6 version of JavaScript, right? So to do that, we are going to go to the code. Let's close that. And so here, what we're going to do is that we're going to go to package.json, right? And we're going to change the type to module. So here, if we say type, right? The two options are either CommonJS, that's the default. The default is CommonJS, so meaning it was using the default CommonJS, so, and you don't have to configure it because that is already the value. But here we're going to override it, and we want the module, right? The other thing that we're going to add here is the command that we are using to start the server, right, is node app.js, right? So we're going to say for start, it's node, then app.js, okay? Oops, are we missing something? I think we need to restart node one. Okay, so it's complaining, right, because app is now using the older syntax, right? We need to rewrite this using the newer syntax where we do the import express from express. So if we save that, notice it restarts just fine, right? And so that's going to it should work just the same, right? Let's just remove that. Let's see if we go and here and do hello. Right, life is good. See that? Right, so that's working just like before. Okay. Okay, routes. So these URLs that we've been using, like slash hello, slash, right, and the fact that we use it inside of the we use these URLs or these snippets of URLs within the context of listening for incoming requests like get, post, put, and delete, and then also mixing it in with a function that handles the event handler and does some work. So together, those three things, that it's a URL that is responding to some HTTP event, get, post, put, delete, and that there's a function, some action associated, or mapped to that URL. Then so that we refer to as a route, right? Very much like the route that we used in the user interface. Those routes were in the user interface context, right? That if some path matched some URL, then we would display some content, some screen or some, or some component or something like that, right? Well, here is similar. We're looking at the path, right? And depending on the path, right, we're going to do some work, right? We're going to run some code, right? So whereas the user interface, we were mapping, path to user interface components. Here we're mapping, path, but to work, right? Or some code or some function that's going to do some work for us, right? And then it's going to respond the results of that work. Okay. So and typically what we do is that we try to group all these routes, together, right, into files that are going to host, commands or operations that are, that fall together logically, right? That they should live together, right? So what we're going to do is that, as an example of this, right, we're going to move these routes, the get hello and get the root here, right? We're going to move them over to hello.js, right? So kind of like practicing this fact that these routes should all live together, right? Because we're going to be creating quite a few routes, and they can't all go in app.js, right? Just like we did in the user interface, right? We have routes or routers, a whole bunch of places, right? And that deal with different subsets, right? The one we have routes for the courses, routes for the modules, routes for the account, right? Routes for Canvas. So same thing here, right? We're going to group together these routes into separate files that are dedicated to that subset, right? So let's move over these two files into our existing hello.js. So let's do that. So we have here, we have these two routes. We're going to move them over. We'll cut this from here, and we're going to move them over to hello. Right, there's our hello. And we don't need this console layer anymore, right? Now, the problem with this is that we don't have app. So now, careful, don't do the following, right? Where we reinstantiate Express. We could, you would be tempted, right, to import Express and create a new instance of app and put it in here. Don't do that, right? There can only be one instance of the Express library for every project, so don't do that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to wrap this in a function. We'll wrap this in a function and then pass a reference to app, right? So this will be a function, right? And the function will be called maybe hello routes, the function like that, right? So that's the function, and we're going to pass a reference to app here, right? And we're going to export default this function. What we'll do is that in the app, we're going to import this hello. So import hello routes from our local hello. Now notice that the typical import statement is to just use the name of the file like that, because the name of the file is hello. And that's relying on a configuration that we don't have, that assumes that the extension is .js, right? And that is going to be resolved at runtime, but we don't have that configuration. So here, we're going to have to explicitly add the extension. So don't forget to put the extension. And so now that we have the hello route, so this hello route is now basically this function over here. So we can call it. We can say hello route. And what we're going to do is that we're going to invoke the function and pass app.js, right? We're going to pass app, right, as an argument, and then it's going to be used to declare these two routes. See that? And once we do that, we are able to still respond to that data, right? To those requests, right? So let's make some changes here just to confirm that the changes have taken. So if I go back here, right, and do hello, and I refresh, note that it works, right? Life is good, hello world. Make sense? All right. Yeah, so we moved it over from app.js into our hello routes. Okay. All right. Yeah, so let's work through several lab exercises to practice some of the basic skill sets that we need to be able to integrate, right, the user interface with this new server. Okay. All right, so first of all, let's create a function, right, called lab5 that's going to allow us to group together all the various exercises, right? So all these exercises, at least on the server side, right, we're going to put them all inside of lab5. And same thing in the user interface, right? We're also going to create some user interface components in the screen, right? And also there will be a component called lab5, but in the user interface. And what we want to do is that we want the lab5 in the user interface to integrate with the lab5 that we have running on the server. All right, so let's create lab5 inside of lab5 index.js. So here on the server, we'll do lab5 index.js, and we'll create a route, right, that can just say hello. So this will be mapped to lab5 welcome, meaning localhost :4000 / lab5 / welcome, and from that we'll respond with welcome to lab5. Make sense? Okay, so we have that, and now on the app.js, right, we got to make sure that we call this function passing it a reference to app. And we do that here, right? So we're gonna, again, same thing that we did with hello world. We're gonna import lab5. There it is, and we pass in a reference to app. Perfect. Actually, let's in that order. There we go. So now we should be able to generate this request, right, in the browser. We should be able to say, lab5 hello. Oh, is that not it? Wait a minute. Oh, welcome, sorry. lab5 welcome. There it is. So welcome to lab5. Okay? So yeah, so we are talking to the content of this file. All right? Okay. Now to integrate this with the user interface, we'll do something simple right now. We'll just provide hyperlinks, right? A hyperlink that when you click on that hyperlink, it'll just go and communicate with lab5 welcome, right? And we should be able to see that content. So let's create a lab5 index.tsx in the front end, right? So this will be here, and we have account, courses, Canvas, lab5, so new, lab5 index, right? And let's copy this over here. And notice that the implementation is trivial, right? It's just a header and then just a hyperlink, so that when I click on the hyperlink, this is exactly what I had typed here manually. This allows me to do it, from within a user interface. But notice that this is not using link. See that? It's just using a plain old anchor. So it's navigating away from our React application. It's abandoning our React application, and then it's going to a completely different place, which should be the content of the response of the server saying welcome to lab5, right? So that's running, and so let's add our lab5 to our table of content and the routes. So table of content. So here's lab4. Let's create lab5. And have this lab5 over here. Okay. And also let's add the routes in the labs. The labs index. Let's add a lab5 over here, 5, and this is lab5. There we go. All right, so in our user interface, we should be able to, let's see, we should be able to go here into the labs, and now we have lab5, so we click on lab5. There it is, our welcome, right? And it's just a hyperlink, so if I click on that, right, it just navigates. See that this is exactly what I did manually. Manually, I typed that, and we get the same response, right? And in both cases, right, we are not in the React application. Over here, we are no longer in the React application. If I go back, right, then now I'm back in the React application. But when I click on this hyperlink, notice that I'm going to a completely different URL, of a different server, this might as well, be halfway across the world, right? It's definitely not our React server. There it is. So now I am talking to the remote server. Okay. All right, so let's continue. Let's talk about environment variables. So yeah, so right now we've been just using a single environment, right, as being a development environment for our React application. But now we're going to be starting to talk about multiple environments, right? And we want to make sure that we can configure, right, different properties depending on the environment that you're talking to, right? So, for instance, right now our front end it's only talking to us, right? But now we're going to have it not only talking to us, but also integrating with a server. But this server, locally is going to be running at, wherever it's going to be running at, localhost 4000, right? And our React application is going to be running at localhost 3000. But when you deploy these two onto Netlify and Heroku, these URLs are going to be different. This is in Netlify. This will be something Netlify, blah blah blah, right? Whereas this, instead of being localhost, it'll be something Heroku, right? Lat5, blah blah blah, right? So we need to be able to have our environments, our front end, right? Be able to know, okay, where am I running? Before it didn't matter, right? Because everything was running on the browser, but now our browser application is also going to be talking to a server, right? And sometimes, if this is running locally, it'll be talking, my local browser is going to be talking to my local server, right? But when I deploy this to my Netlify, and when I deploy this to my Heroku or Render.js or whatever, right? Then it's different, right? Because the same code needs to be able to either talk to my local host or talk to the Netlify version or the React Render.js version, right? So I need to be able to configure what these URLs are, right? So locally, it's localhost 3000, but remotely, it'll be something else, right? And we do that using environment variables, right? So let's do that. So let's create in our React.js application, we're going to create an environment variable called React App Remote Server, right? And it's going to be equal to where the server is running, the base URL of my server, which is this one right here, right? 127 something something 4000. That's the base, right? Okay, localhost 4000, right? Everything else is a path, right? A path that can change. It can be different, but the base is always that. Okay, so instead of hard coding this value, instead of doing that, because it could change, right? Because it'll be different when this is running on Netlify or Heroku or wherever. So instead of using that hard coded value, what we're going to do is we're going to create an environment variable, and so we're going to use this variable all throughout our application so that we can configure, right, through files here, through environment variable files and configuration, we can change this value, right, for different environments, right? So let's do that. So we're going to create an env local, right, in my React application. So let's see, maybe you already have it. There it is. So env local. Oh, I already did it. So React app remote server, blah blah blah. Yeah, perfect. Okay. And so we're going to do that. So now, right, in our code, all throughout our React application, we're never going to hard code the URL, the actual URL. We're never going to do that. Instead, we're going to use this variable. And what's that going to allow us to do is that, when we deploy it on Netlify, we're going to be able to point this, right? We're going to be able to set a different value so that it will point to, Render.js, wherever our server ends up deployed, okay? So yeah, so let's do that. So let me demonstrate that. Let me create an environment variable, TSX, right, in the user interface. So let's see, in Lat5, Lat5, let's create an environment variable. Exercise, oops, wait a minute. Now you need to do that. Let me remove this. Delete, I meant to just copy the environment variable TSX over here. So let's create that, perfect. And let's copy that. All right, so what this is doing is that it's using this global object called process.env, right? So process.env allows you to access the variables that you declare in your environment file, right? So this environment file includes several name value pairs. So here's the name, equal, and then the value. Make sure that there's no spaces here around the equal sign, no spaces, right? And also there's a naming convention that, for React applications, right, they all have to start with React app, right? If you don't start your variable with React app, it won't work. You won't be able to see it, right? You won't be able to load it, right? And so to load it, you say process env, the name of the variable, right? And then locally you can store it in some variable, some constant, whatever. What we're doing is that we're reading the environment variable declared here in local, right? And then we're just displaying it, right? We're copying it into a local constant and we're displaying it, all right? All right, so let's add this to lab 5. And so I'll put it down here. So environment variable, there it is. Save that. And so if we go back, there it is. See that? The environment variables, right? It's displaying the remote server. And this value, this URL is being read, from within the env local. So this value is now available from the user interface. Perfect. Excellent. Actually, let me put this over here. There we go. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so this is just demonstrating that we do have access to that, right? So now everywhere we have a reference to this, right, where we have local hosts, we should not use that hard-coded value. Instead, right, we should make sure to always use the environment variable because this will work fine locally, right, when it's running locally on your machine, but it won't work, right, when you deploy this to Netlify, right? So yeah, so let's do that. Let's in our local lab 5 here, right? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do it here. So we're going to grab the React, and so now we can replace this and fix this so that this works also remotely. Right, so let's use the remote server constant here, and we're going to replace this. There we go, with remote server variable. Okay, perfect, right? And this should work just the same. In fact, we go hello, it works just the same. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Environment variable, blah, blah, we did that. Okay. Another thing that we need to care is that, just like we in the user interface, we're making sure that to use these environment variables on the user interface. Also on the server also supports environment variables. Okay? In particular, there is an environment variable that is definitely very, very important when you deploy this to Heroku or Render.js or whatnot, right? In those environments, you don't get to choose the port that you are going to be using because you're running on somebody else's machine, right? So what these services do is that they provide to you the actual port that your application is running at in an environment variable called port, right? So locally, port is undefined, right? But remotely it will be defined. Now, but so this should work in both places, locally or remote, because locally this is undefined. And notice there's an or, meaning that if this is undefined, then we're taking this value for the listen, right? Now, if this is defined, then we take this value and ignore the second one, okay? So let's do that on the server side on app.js. We're going to this process.env port, right? And this is a required step, right? If you want this to run, right, in the in render.js or wherever remotely. Okay, very, very important. All right, so let's start talking about how is that we can send data over to the server, right, from the client, right? So there are three basic ways, right? We're going to first talk about the easier two versions, right? And then later on, we'll talk about the harder one, right? So the two easy ways is that we can use either path parameters, right, or query parameters. So path parameters or query parameters. So the data can be either encoded as part of the path, right? It is very, very similar to what we did in the user interface, right, where we declare routes, and the path can have parameters, right? And then there was API on the user interface, right, to be able to parse those parameters from the path. Yes. So similar here, right? We can name parts of a path and associate them to variables, so that when the data comes in, when the URL comes in, right, and starting with lab5 add, and then presumably these are numbers 3 and 5, right? Then we can retrieve them. We can retrieve each one, both of them, right, using this request params. So request params is where the Express library parses the path, and then the values named here, right? It'll creates an object with the actual values, and they can be pulled from here, right? Now this is not very unsimilar to what we do with the use params, right? Remember, and we use the use params to be able to parse paths, right, or parameters that are passed in to different screens, right? So this is very, very similar. Once you have it, you can treat it like just regular strings. Here we're converting it into integers and then computing the addition, right? And then we have subtraction. And I believe I asked you to, on your own, create, divide and multiply and blah, 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 right? So yeah, so let's create path params on the server. So we have path params, lat5, copy the content. Okay. So yeah, so these are two routes that we are creating. One that responds to a get lat5 add, right? So, and then you pass in some numbers that you want to add, right? Or numbers that you want to subtract, okay? And you do the arithmetic subtraction, okay? So yeah, so let's see if we can invoke this, right? We'll need to add this to app.js, right? So path params, or maybe already did in lat5. So lat5, we can do this right here. We can just pass in, we can import the path params. So import path parameters, right? And just pass in app here, path parameters app, perfect, okay? So now we should be able to navigate. What was the path? Let's see. Okay, so we do need to, okay, there it is. So we did import in lat5, there it is, perfect. So on the client side, we need to create a little user interface, right? That is going to allow us to invoke that, right? Nevertheless, we can still practice it, right? If it works. It's right now mapped to what? There it is. So we should be able to click on this and see if it works. Okay, the server, is this server running? Let's see. Oh, okay, so we do have an error. Oh, we forgot the .js here at the end. There we go. Yeah, so we refresh here. Notice that it doesn't work. A5 or was it lab5? I think it's supposed to be. What did I use here? Oh, lab5. Yeah, okay, so why is this A5? Lab5. There it is. See that? It works with 6. So it must be a lab5. It is lab5. So
That is correct. Left 5. Why didn't this work? And I clicked on it. Oh, FA5. That's wrong. Huh? This is supposed to be a left 5. 5. Click. Okay, there it is. So it works. Right. So yeah, just added those values, 2 plus 4, right? And it returns the syntax, the string 6. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So so notice that I can try it out directly on the URL like that, right? By typing it in the browser, and it works just fine, right? Because the browser, what the browser does, right, is that when you write a URL here, what it does, you look at the network tab, right? We're going to be using that quite a bit this couple weeks, right? So if we refresh, notice that it sends a request. There it is, localhost 4000 lab. Blah, blah, blah. It's a GET request, right? There are no cookies or anything like that, right? And then the preview, we can see the response coming back, the raw 6 value, okay? All right, yeah. Let me close that. All right, encoding parameters. So let's create a little user interface in the React side, right? Where you can, maybe create a small little calculator that allows you to encode some values, some A and B's, right? And then click on add, right? And it spits out the results. So let's do that. So path params, but on the browser side, so lab 5, path params. There we go. Copy this. All right, that one, and then want links that invoke the command. There we go. All right, so here we're creating 2 input fields, input field A, input field B, so we can type in a couple of numbers, and then it's going to call our server, right? It's going to encode the values A and B as part of the URL, right? And then it's going to compute A plus B, and then if I click on the URL, it goes out to the server, a response, whatever it is, right? And the subtraction as well. Right, so let's add this to lab 5. Right, so this would be path parameter something. Path parameter, is this? Yes, this is it. Okay, so that means that now it should render. I go back. There's path parameters, so it's going to allow me to add either one. So if I click on it, notice that indeed is 57 correct, or 35 minus 23, it gives you 11. So that works, right? That makes sense? Yeah. All right. So another way that we can pass parameters, right, is to encode them, right, not inside of the path like this, right? So it's part of the path. Another way is that we can encode it at the end, right? Notice the question mark at the end of the URL. Here you can provide a name value pair, right? So here's operation add ampersand A equal 34 ampersand B equal 23. So you can have an arbitrary string here with lots of params and equals, and you have lots of name value pairs. But as long as you are below a threshold, right? I think in browsers like 250 characters, so you can't be too long, right? You can't embed paragraphs, right? But a quick and dirty thing, yes, definitely. So let's encode using a query parameter. So let's create query params. Excuse me. In lab 5 here. And let's copy this. Okay, so what it's doing here is, okay, what it's doing, notice that before it was using request param. See that? That's parsing from the URL. Whereas here, we're not passing
right? Well, actually, we're passing as part of the URL, but after the query string, right? The question mark, right? And that you do not include in the declaration of the path when you're creating the route, all right? But presumably, we have parameters in there called A, B, and operation. And that's taken from the query. Just like we did here from the params, this one parses the content of the URL. This one also parses the content of the URL, but after the question mark, right? All those name value pairs, the names are those names, A, B, and operation, right? Given by the URL, right? And the values is whatever values those queries had, right? And what we're doing is that, we're comparing the operation to add and subtract, right? And then calculating the values of either actually adding or subtracting the values, right? And so this use this as an example to go ahead and implement a few others like multiply and divide, and you can do that on your own, right? So we have that on the back end. Let's see on the front end. Let's create query parameters. So query parameters, there it is. And let's look at the content and path parameters. No, yeah, query parameters, right? So inside of lab 5, right, we did environment variables. Now let's do path parameters. We did that. So now query parameters. Query parameters. Wait, is this not? Oh, it was a snippet, right? So we do need to put this inside of a return. And we need to close this. And this is a export default function query parameter. I'm going to return that, right? Okay. Oh, did I miss something? Oh, we need also setters and getters for this, right? So this looks very similar to what we did with path parameters. Let's create these two like that. So let's use it here as well. We need to import these two. There we go. And what else? Okay, we don't have remote server. Let's copy that from here, remote server. Okay, what else? Return, blah, blah. Okay, we don't need that. There we go. I think we're all good, right? And so an index, we have import. We're going to import that in. And let's see if this was successful. Okay, there's our query parameter. So it should be the same thing, right? When I click on this, it should just calculate the lab 5 calculator. Lab 5. Is it mapped to correctly? So this goes lab 5 calculator, and what is it mapped over here? Lab 5 calculator, yeah. Oh, did we not include this in our here? Yeah, we have to include that here, right? And pass in app. We want to import it. We'll say import query params. Okay, I think now hopefully it'll work. Where is it? Okay. And the React application. Okay, there we go. So let's refresh. This still works, right? Let's see if we click it. There we go. Right. So we're subtracting. The command is subtract, and it runs, 34 minus 23, and it returns the solution. Okay. All right. Yeah. Where's the slides? Okay, on your own, right? We show you examples of how to create addition, subtraction, right? Different ways using query params and path params. So on your own, right, you're going to enhance this implementation so that it also supports multiply and divide using both the query params and the path params, right? Again, these are all basic skills on how to interact and integrate between the user interface that's going to be passing us data, parameterization, functions, and things like that, right? And how we need to be able to parse all that data that the client is sending us. Okay. All right. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back. Right. We'll continue working on our server. Okay. All right. So let's continue. All right, let's talk about being able to interact with the server, but not with just a plain simple primitive data types, but also being able to work with complex objects and arrays and things like that, right? So let's start with objects. So let's create a route, right? We'll call it working with objects, right? That's going to declare an object on the server, and then we'll try and integrate with it from the client, from the user interface, right? And for now, it'll be just just working with some of the properties inside of the object. First, we'll try to fetch the entire object, and then we're going to try and maybe fetch a particular field, update a field, things like that, right? So let's do that. So let's create a working with objects on the server side. So let's create here in Lab 5 working with objects. All right. So this is declaring a route, right, that it's mapped to Lab 5 assignments, right, and it's going to respond with the object assignment over here, right? It could also be a JSON file that we load into the file system, right? But here we have it just embedded inside of our source code. And notice that here we are responding not with .send, but we are responding with .json, right? So this makes sure that when the response comes back from the server, right, it includes some headers, right, that the data type is the correct data type JSON, right? Right. So in the Lab 5, let's configure this. Working with objects like that, and we're going to pass in app like that. All right, and so now we should be able to go to this URL and retrieve that object. Right? So let's see, we should be able to test it. So Lab 5 assignment, and there it is, right? So it's able to retrieve that object, right? But instead of doing it like this, let's create a user interface that can access this, right? So let's create in the user interface, let's create just a hyperlink that can connect, right, and click on that, right? So let's do that and click in the TSX on the client on the Lab 5, right? We'll have working with objects, and let's copy this, which is just creates a hyperlink, right, to be able to that if you click on it, it gets the assignment. It goes to remote server Lab 5 assignment, right? So let's include this in the Lab 5 component. So this will be working with objects, right? So that if we go here in the working, retrieving the object, get assignment. See that this is get the assignment. It's a hyperlink that goes out to the assignment. When we click on it, it's the same thing that we had earlier, this one, right? Where do we have it? Over here, right? It's the same thing. Okay, yeah. So we can go back to our user interface. Okay. All right, so that's getting the whole object. Okay. What about something a little more granular? Maybe we want to retrieve a particular property, maybe just the title, right? So let's add this route that notice that instead of returning the entire assignment object, it returns the assignment dot title, right? So let's add that here like that. So now I should be able to, the assignment, I want to retrieve maybe the description. So it would be assignment dot, the title, I think I have the assignment, what do I call it? Yeah, assignment title. So assignment dot title. Yeah, there it is. So you notice that it's returning just the title, right? So as the part of the user interface, we can create another hyperlink that allows us to navigate to just that part of the property, right? So here
we can just add another one down here where it's just going to allow us to click and just get the title here, right? So there it is. So get the title, click on it, and get the title, right? So what else? So what about be able to modify an object, right, that lives on the server? I would like to change it, maybe pass, right, pass in the as a path parameter a new title, right? So I want to update it, right? So let's do that. So let's copy this into working with it's a different route that encodes a new title at the end of this URL, right? And what it does is it's going to first parse what that new title is from the params, right? And then it's going to modify the property with this new string that I'm passing as an argument, and then it's going to respond with the new version of that assignment, right? So let's try it out. So say, so if I go here, right, and that's the assignment, and if I grab the title, so the title is Node.js assignment, but I can change it. I can say, Node.js assignment 1, 2, 3. Notice that indeed it comes back with Node.js assignment 1, 2, 3, right? And if I ask for the title, notice it will come back with the new version, right, of the title. So it works, right? So we can create on the in the user interface, what we could do is a little form, right, that would allow us to type the new title and then invoke the command to change the title in the remote server, right? So let's do that. So in the code here, right? Let's see. We're going to. Oh, we already have that. We're going to have a. Yeah, we're going to have a state variable, right, in the client that we're going to be able to edit through an input field with the new title that we want, right? So let's do that. So let's add here and then a state variable, right, that represents an assignment object, right? And I'm going to display this in an input field that I can edit, right? So let's also, we are going to create a template URL, right? That that builds on the base URL for manipulating the assignment, right? Getting the title, updating the title. And so here's an input field. Here's an input field where I can modify the title, and then when I click it, right, it's going to encode the new title, right, as part of the URL, right? So let's do that. So let's add that, say, retrieving object. Let's put it here, so modifying. So yeah, there it is, right? So this is going to allow me to update the title. Notice that here we can retrieve the lab5 assignments. Okay, right, notice that's still 1, 2, 3, right? So over here, I'm going to change it to assignment, 2, 3, 4, update title. There it is. So notice if I go here and I refresh, notice that indeed the title has changed using my little input field here. Right? And I can change it to whatever I want. I can change it to assignment ABC. Right? So if I go here and I refresh, notice that again it has changed. Okay. So yeah, we can modify content remotely. Okay. How about arrays? Arrays are a little more involved, right? Since instead of working with a single object, the array actually might have multiple objects in there, right? So let's create another component, right? A different file that can deal with arrays. So let's create on the server for our example here, working with arrays. And so here we have an array that has just a couple objects, right? Maybe a few to-do lists, right? The title of each to-do, each task, right? And whether it's completed or not, right? Some tasks are not completed and some tasks are completed, right? And so here we are creating a route, right, that is going to allow us to access all the to-dos, right, from the user interface. Right? So let's add this to our lab5. So this is working with arrays app. like that. Save that, right? So now I should be able to just access the array. So I can say to-dos here. There's my array of to-dos, right? So from the user interface, right, let's create also a working with arrays that is going to allow us to do that instead of manually. We can have a button that we can click and go fetch it, right? So let's do that in the user interface. We'll create a component working with arrays in the user interface, and let's copy that. Let's paste it in there. That's half of it. Oh, actually, no, I think that's it, right? Yeah, that's it. So this is just a this is what? This is just a hyperlink that we can click on it, and that is going to go to the remote server lab to-dos, right? But it's a hyperlink as opposed to me typing it into the URL of the browser, right? Let's include this in our lab 5. So this is working with arrays. There it is. So it's here. No, go back maybe. Oh, where is it? Oh, maybe it's this one. Go back. Oh, there we go. Working with arrays. There it is. So if we click on to-dos, get to-dos, right, it returns the to-dos. Perfect. Excellent. All right, so but the more interesting part is maybe working with the individual pieces of the to-do, right? So for instance, maybe I don't want to retrieve all the to-dos, but maybe a particular to-do or particular task, right? And maybe I want to pass the ID of the to-do that I want, the individual to-do. And then on the server, what I'll do is that, I'll grab that ID, right? And then I'll be able to, right, just filter or find that specific to-do and return that one to-do. It's a very common operation, right? That you might have a collection of items, right? Each one with a unique identifier, and you want to retrieve a particular one, right? And a common way to do that is to encode the ID as part of the path, right? And then retrieve, filter out and find that specific item, right? So yeah, so let's grab this, and here working with arrays. Here, this one returns all of them, but this one just returns that one, right? That one with the primary key, finds it, comparing it, and then retrieve that one to do, right? So I could try it out. Say in the to-dos. No, where is it? Wait, localhost. So this is lab 5 to-dos. Yeah, that's a to-do. Now say I pass in the ID 3, right? So I say 3 over here. Notice that it returns that one object, right? Again, it's a very common process, operation, right? That you encode the ID of the specific item that you want as part of the URL. Okay. What about okay? What about? It'd be nice to have that I could have a user interface, right, where I can type the ID of the to-do that I want, right, and then fetch that one to do, right. So for that, right, we can create a little state variable where I can keep track of the ID that I want, right, and then I can edit it, right. Click on to do, and it will fetch that one to do, right. I will encode the to do ID as part of the URL, right, and then fetch it. Okay, so yeah, so let's do that. And so here, right, let's add in the working with arrays. Where do we want to put this one? Retrieve, blah, 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 get to, oh, right below, okay, right below the here. Under the HR, okay, under the HR, let's add that. Oh, well, no, actually, that goes here, like that. We'll need to import the use state. And then this, right, will allow us to edit the ID of the to-do that I want, right? So we'll put it under here, like that. Okay, so this will click on the button, and it'll go fetch the to-do of the input field that I have edited here. Okay, and yeah, so this field allows me to edit the ID of the to-do. Okay, so there it is. So that one, if I click on this, it'll retrieve the first ID, but I can check, check maybe and ask for the one number two, right? And it gets number two. See that? So one at a time, I can retrieve them. All right. Okay, so that's a very common operation, retrieve by ID. But what about other fields, right? Because the to-dos that I have, some of them are primary keys that I can filter. But what about if I'm looking them up by either title or maybe by completed? Those are not primary keys, right? They're not unique, right? Task could have the same title. And you can have several of these that are true, some, lots of them that are false. So the common implementation is that, if you are filtering by primary key, the standard is to include the ID as part of the path of the URL. But if you are filtering by anything other than a primary key, right, then the filtering, you would pass that information as part of the query. Okay, where you say, to-dos query, completed equal true, for instance, right? And then it would filter, and you would get only the ones that are completed or not completed, right? So that's the standard. That's the typical way of doing it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to refactor this to-dos, right? Because the query is appended after the URL, right? And so notice that to-dos here by default, if you don't provide any filters, right? No ID, no nothing, right? The default behavior is to return all the to-dos. But if you do provide any filters like the title or the completed flag, then it would be the same URL, but we would append the query at the end, query completed equal true or something, right? That's exactly what we're going to do, right? We're going to parse out completed. So we're going to put this right before, right before here, right before returning all the to-dos. We're going to check to see, is there a completed flag? Check to see if it's not undefined. So if it's not undefined, I'm going to compare it to the string equal true or false, because queries are parsed as strings. Even though I'm passing a Boolean, right, it gets passed as a string true or string false. So I'm comparing it. Okay, is it equal to this true string? If it is, right, this will return true, the Boolean true. If it doesn't return true, meaning it's false, then this will return false, but the Boolean false, right? So this is the completed in Boolean type. So now that I have this as a Boolean, I can iterate, right, over the array and filter and find those to-dos, based on whether they're completed or not, right? So this would return all the ones that are true, right? And then I can respond with a completed to-dos, which is a subset of all the to-dos. And then I'm going to return. This is very important that I return. Not only that am I responding, but I'm also returning. If I don't return, I'm going to try and respond again. And that's an error, right? That I do two responses, right? It'll give it an exception saying, the response has already been completed, blah, 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 right? You can't have two responses. But that's why we have to remember, right? If we're doing two responses, right, one of them has to return and make sure that none or no other responses occur, right? So that's how we're doing it over here, right? Okay, so I can now over here, and if I ask for the to-dos, if I don't have any query, right, then it just returns all the to-dos. But now I can say completed. I can say false, and notice that it returns only the ones that are false, right? Or this is task 1 and 3. But if I say true, right, it returns 2 and 4, which are completed true. See that? So now obviously the nice things the way you would implement this in the user interface, right, is that you would have a hyperlink, right, that you can encode as part of the URL the completed true or false. Maybe even have like a checkbox that based on the checkbox you would return one or the other, right? So let's add that to the user interface, right, at the end here, like that. So there's our completed to-dos. It returns the ones that are completed, right? Perfect. What about wanting to be able to create a new to do, right? And so what we're going to do is that we're going to implement a new URL, right? A new route that I'm going to encode the verb create, right, in the end of the URL. And then what it's going to do is that when I call this, it'll create a brand new to do, right, with a new ID, with a task name, completed false, right, and it's going to push it into the array, and it's going to respond with the new array that should include our new to do. And notice that this one is being implemented before this get. See that? That's very important, right? Because this URL here, this path, is a superset of this, right? So that if I declare this after this one, and I type in the URL lat5 to do's create, it'll try through here. The ID would be create. Okay, so this path, this route would never get invoked because it would always be opaque by this one. That's why I'm declaring this first before this one, right? So that there is no inconsistency, right, or ambiguity on whether the ID is a create or something else, right? So here, as long as it's before this one, so I'm going to create at the beginning like that, right? So now I should be able to create a new one. So I say, completed here. I could say to-do/create is going to add a new one, and there it is. This last one at the bottom. See that? And I can do this again. If I do it a couple of times more, it'll just create more. Right there it is. See that? New task, new task, new task, new task. Okay. Yeah. So actually, a better implementation might be that the title is actually a right. It's that takes a look at the length of the to do, right, and it appends it at the end, so that that they're unique, right? So let's look at that. So notice that if I refresh, notice that to dos go back to the same to dos as before, right? Because every time you restart the server, it resets all those variables, right? So notice if I call this a couple of times, we have new task 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Okay. So that now in the user interface, we can create a button, right, that would allow us to call it, and invoke it several times to create new to-dos, right? So here, right, we can add a button, right, that if we click on it, right, it'll create the new to-dos. So create, and there it is. It created number 10. So I can go back and I can, again, create it, right, and then it's number 11. See that? So yeah. What about removing, right? Removing. So probably what we'll do is that it will encode the ID and then a verb to delete. Right. So let's copy that. I don't believe it matters where this goes, so I'll just put it here. Right. So basically, I'm going to access the ID of the to-do that I want to remove, right? And I'm just going to filter it out. Right? I'm going to find it where it is, the index, and I'm just going to splice it out from the array, and I'm going to return all the to-dos that survived the splice. Okay. So to try it out, look at all the to-dos. Okay, there's only 4. And I can delete it. I can say, slash the ID. So I want to remove number 3. I would say 3 or 3/delete. Right, and it removes it. Notice I only get 1, 2, and 4. Right, and I can create a couple more. Create, right, so that I have plenty to delete. Right now, I can create a user interface on the React.js that allows me to change the ID, the one that we already have, the ID that allows us to filter out and find that one to do. Well, I can use that same one, but have a delete button that will remove that one that I can edit, right? So let's do that. So deleting, right? And like that. And where'd it go? Is it this one? No. This one, let's go back. Yeah, so there's our delete. And so we can remove the number one. So let's get all the to-dos first. Okay, we have all these. We have 7, but let's remove this one, 6, right? So let's go back. We can grab and give the ID. So delete Stu, whose ID is yada yada yada. So click on that. So notice that we have 4, 5, 7. So 6 is gone. Right? And so that I can remove another one to say number 4, or this one right there, right? So we say go back, paste in the ID of that I want to remove, right, and delete, and notice that it's no longer there. So it starts with task 5. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Let's keep going. So deleting. Then maybe I want to be able to update where maybe I can type the title, maybe an input field where I can type the title, and I can provide the new title for specific ID. So for specific ID, I want a new title, right? I'm going to pass in those as parameters, right, as part of the URL. And then I'm going to find that one ID, and I'm going to update the title. Okay, so let's do that. Let's grab that, right, and part of the server, right, and then in the user interface, right. I think we already have that, no, in the user interface. Let's see. Oh, set to do. Okay, no, we don't have it in the set to do. All right, so let me copy that. In the state variable, we only have the ID. Okay. And then we'll provide an input field where I can edit various items, right? Maybe the title, right? And the title, and okay, here's the title. Set to do. Okay, this allows me to edit the ID. Okay, the ID that I want to change, and then here's the field that I want to change of the title. All right, so let's do that. So let's grab that. Let's add it at the end, right there, so that now we should be able to edit. Let's see, go back. Go back. Yeah, so we can provide the ID that I want to edit, right, and then the new title. So let's do that. Let's get all the to-dos. Okay, let's change number 3. Right, number 3, and we'll change it from task 3. So we'll say I want to change number 3, right, and Node.js assignment. So it says to do. So there it is. So notice that it has been updated, right? So that now instead of saying task 3, it says Node.js assignment. See that? All right. Yeah. So let's leave it here. Next week we'll talk about asynchronous communication. Where notice that up to this point, the way we've been implementing this is that, right, we are in the user interface. We click and we kind of leave the user interface, right, and we navigate to the server. And that's very that's not very pretty. All right. So what we really want to be able to do is stay in the user interface, click these buttons. It talks to the server, certainly, right? It does all the operations that we've seen so far, but instead of leaving the user interface and navigating to the server, instead I want to stay here. So I want this all to happen behind the scenes, right? We want all these requests to go out, right? And not have this jarring experience, right, of leaving the user interface. So for that, we'll learn asynchronous communication. All right. All right. All right. Let's have office hours, right? If you have questions and you need help with an assignment or things like that, let's discuss that. All right. I'm going to stop sharing so that and I'm going to give permissions to other folks to share. Right. So if you want to share, and we can take a look at it, and we can work together. Okay. Go ahead. Who's first?
Hi, Professor. I cannot share.
You cannot share.
Yeah,
Try again.
still cannot.
Oh, maybe because I'm sharing. Okay, try again. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah, now it works. Yeah, so let me show you my issue. So it looks like a simple issue, but
Yeah, go ahead.
just cannot be fixed. Let me see.
You have, I think, a lot
Can
of
you
servers starting up.
can you can you see my screen?
I can, yes.
Okay, so you can see the module doesn't works, but the other button works.
I can only see your code.
Oh, okay,
Code.
let me share my like
Yeah, the whole
can you
screen, please.
the full screen?
Okay, now I can see this. Yes.
Yeah. I have two bugs. One is the module doesn't works. Another issue is when I click add a new course, the new course can show up, but the picture for the course cannot be rendered here.
Yeah, you can just use a hard-coded image. Though you don't have to. That doesn't need to be dynamic, but that's fine. We can fix
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Okay, so
the main issue is this button doesn't works.
okay,
Yeah,
all right. Can I see? Can you go to the code? Can I see it?
yeah, yeah. Modules.
Okay. I can I take control.
Yes, sure.
All right. All right. Let's see. Uh, hmm. How are you loading Bootstrap?
Bootstrap. I don't.
Let's see. Oh, interesting. You're importing it here. So you're importing it and here. Okay, so this needs to be imported only once
Okay.
and here. Okay, all right, so we're gonna remove this from here. Okay, so I'm gonna remove this, right? And you also have it here. You have it here too. Remove from here. Okay, can you go back to your browser? It's broken now.
It's
Refresh. Can you refresh? Okay, you still have Bootstrap. Okay, let me stop. No, we'll go back. Cancel. You still have Bootstrap somewhere. Wait, are these all? These are all running?
um
I think you have this running several times. Yeah, you've done npm start like 10 times.
okay.
Oh, and this is okay. We need to look at the local one. This is not local.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let me see. Is this a local?
Yeah,
Oh,
see that? Okay, all right.
Oh, okay, let me try again.
Okay, you have to kill all these. No. Say you're starting a new one, brand new, and you should never do that. You should only have one of these running.
Oh, okay.
So let's stop these. Stop. 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 You should only have one,
Okay.
or at most two, but only one npm start. Never two npm. No more than one npm start.
Okay. I got you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna work with this last one. Okay. And so here and your index here, this is where we're going to import Bootstrap. Okay, so now it's working, right? And we also no wait no don't do anything yet.
Okay.
We're also going to import there we go. Okay, now sign in. Try it again. Clicking on that button.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, you were missing the JavaScript import.
Oh, missing JavaScript import.
The Bootstrap JavaScript import.
Oh, okay. So let me see. Imported here.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be imported only here in the index at the root of the application, and then
Okay.
never again.
Okay, I got
You
it. Seems
you had it imported in several places.
Oh, okay. So how this import correlated with that specific button, but all the
Yeah, no.
other
So yeah, the button is using JavaScript to pop up that dialog box, and you didn't have the JavaScript installed. This is the
oh
JavaScript. This is the JavaScript part. So some components, some Bootstrap components require the JavaScript library to be installed, like for
oh
animation and for for effects like that, like pop-ups and things. They need the jQuery JavaScript component. Yep.
okay, okay, I got you. It's hard for me to debug through this way. I feel like I tried all other ways, and also the image doesn't render. So what is the causes of that issue?
Okay. Yeah. Let's look at that. So let's go to excuse me. Wait. Let me see the canvas.
Uh, yeah. So the other issue is like when I go to the course and I add button, the picture doesn't show up, even though I do.
Your what's going on with your machine is spinning. Okay, so yeah, don't do anything. Wait, stop. Let me see. Oh my goodness, very slow. What's going on? Inspect. See? Okay, so yeah, images, that number doesn't exist, you know?
The number?
There's no image with that number. So that's why, right?
Okay, okay, but I didn't put this here. Actually, I put another name, not like a image 17304, something like that.
Yeah, you're using the aren't you using the ID of the using the ID, aren't you? And the IDs,
map to these images, right? All these are IDs.
Yeah.
That's why these work, right? Because these IDs exist and there are images for those IDs.
Yeah, but for that
See the
specific,
ID? See that ID? So when you create these, then that means you either have to, use an ID of some image that already exists, or hard code the image to always be, I don't know, NU PNG or something. So what you can do is in the code, when you create it, where's your creation? So
um,
it's in source. Let me see. Let me get it. So that's uh, that is canvas index. Here's your add. No,
yeah, here I put the
yeah,
image.
add here, right? And yeah, when you render it in your dashboard, you're using the ID for the image. See that? You're using the ID.
Yeah. So how can I add a image for the new courses? So for the new
Yeah,
course,
right. You have to come up with a with a different way, right? You have to come up with a different way of talking about the image.
oh, so I need to change this part.
Yeah, you
Course
have to. Yeah, you can say just RS 101 and just hard code everything.
so they are all same.
Yeah, unless you want to deal with different images, right? Which are dynamic.
Oh, okay. So I have to maybe I should add the image to the course database.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see the issue.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Right, next. Uh, Yuesheng, what's the question? Should you upload your server app on GitHub? How does the structure look like? Yeah, it's going to look exactly what we have locally. No, the what I shared with you, the with the package JSON, right? The app.js, all that. That's going to go into GitHub, which I am going to do that in a minute. I'm going to push that into a new repository, and I'll share with the class. Yep, absolutely, I'll do that. All right, next.
Hello, Professor.
Hi, Sanskar. What's up?
Yeah, so I just had a couple of quick doubts regarding the assignment and the project.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so can I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Are you sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I can see it. What's up?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask like regarding the enrollments button. If I
You
understand it,
you have I think you have a couple windows that are covering your
yeah,
shared
yeah,
screen. I
yeah,
can't see
my
your enrollment button. On the right hand side, you have this big black rectangle.
yeah, it's of the Zoom meeting. Mm,
You can minimize them and then put them to the side, maybe.
mm, okay.
Okay, what's up?
And yeah. So yeah, regarding this button, so if I understand it correctly from the document, it just
Mhm.
toggles the view, right? It's not a link to another page, right?
I mean, you can toggle to different screen, but I think the easiest thing would be that by default, these two courses, you're
Yeah,
only showing two because you're filtering, right?
yeah,
And so the enrollments would toggle a Boolean, right? That if it's true, then it doesn't filter. But if it's
yeah.
false, then it does filter.
Okay, so I have implemented something
Oh,
like that.
perfect.
So it's
Okay.
happen. So that's
Yeah,
happening
excellent.
on the same
Excellent.
page, right? So
Yeah,
this
excellent.
is
Yep.
correct, right?
Yep. Correct. Perfect.
Also,
Excellent.
for the buttons, if it's like unroll and if I click on it, then this is like the correct
Perfect.
behavior.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
Yeah,
And that's
okay.
updating the enrollments array, right? In some
Yeah,
reducer.
yeah, yeah. So from the JSON file, I've created a reducer and it's updating
Excellent.
that.
Perfect. Very good.
Also, the final thing is that if I like click on it, then for only the courses that I'm enrolled in, I should go inside them. And for like these courses, I should not navigate, right?
You cannot navigate. Right, correct. So the Go presumably would not be available.
Okay.
And even if I click on it, I should not be able to go in it unless I enroll. Yep.
Okay.
Although
So
I
if
don't
I
think
want
I
to,
put that in the assignment, but it makes sense. Yes.
I think you updated it. So because it's written that if only if you have enrolled in a course, so like these three courses, you should be able to navigate. Otherwise, you
Oh,
won't
okay.
be
I
able
do
to.
say that. Okay, perfect. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to confirm that this is like the expected behavior because I was confused.
Hmm. Okay, very
Okay.
good. Excellent. Good
Yeah,
job.
and yeah, another thing was regarding the project.
Hmm.
So I think that we are allowed to use like Next.js and like some other CSS libraries like
Yeah,
Tailwind, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, so
the stack you can change completely the stack, right? Different database, different server. Yeah, if you
yeah,
want to use SAS. Yep.
okay. And I was like looking through the requirements file document and it was mentioned that we have to integrate a third-party library, like a third-party API,
Right.
some third-party API. So I was wondering if like if I implement like an authentication system and if I implement something like Google Auth. So will this be considered as like a third-party API or it should be like some way
Uh,
from where I'm
well,
getting
not
data?
not really because whatever third-party API you choose, they
Hmm.
will have a some kind of authentication requirement.
Yeah.
So you and many of them use auth like this, OAuth, right? So you're gonna
Hmm.
have to do this anyway. So that would
Yeah.
not be part
Okay.
of the third party API. You still need to create an API or talk to some API, which will force you to authenticate somehow.
Yeah.
So this would be
Makes
part
sense.
of it. Yes, that would be
Yeah.
part of it. But then there is the accessing of the data.
Okay. So apart from this, I also have to like integrate some other third-party API.
Yeah, some data,
Yeah. Mm.
entertainment,
Okay.
food,
Okay. Yeah.
sports,
Yeah. Okay.
stocks, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. That was all.
All right, good,
Thank
excellent,
you.
thank you. All right, next,
Hello,
Yi.
Professor.
Hi,
Question.
Yi. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I think I have some problem on this dashboard because
Hmm.
I can the courses I add, it cannot show up.
Yeah, I think the problem is that so this is kind of a bug in the assignment in that you are filtering. So see here the enrollments. So why don't you comment out line 44 to line 49? Just comment that out for a second. Comment it out. Now try adding it.
Okay. Okay. So, we just we don't need this one, right?
No. Leave it, right? Put it back.
Put that.
So this, obviously you won't see it. Go back. You
Yeah.
won't see it. And I mean, the issue is that, for you to see it, you would have to be enrolled in it, right? And I do ask you to implement enrollments,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And
So
so when you implement enrollments, that means that you will have a reducer, right? You'll be able to create an enrollment, right?
okay.
And so this, when you add, it should not only create the new course, but it should also create the fact that the current user who's logged in should be enrolled in this course, and then it would show up.
Okay.
So it's an issue that the assignment kind of asks you to do the enrollments later,
Okay.
right? And so that's why it's not showing. So we're not going to penalize you because it's not showing up. Now, when you do create it and you go to enrollments, right, you should be able to see the new course you created, right? Because the enrollments shows all the courses. So
Okay.
this new course should show up in the enrollments. So we're not going to penalize you about whether ad works,
Okay.
but enrollment should work.
Okay.
Right?
So I have another question. So after I add this icon, the pen, the things here, and my models, it just shows up like this.
Oh, okay. Okay, so go to modules.
Yeah. It's index.
So yeah, scroll down a little bit. Okay, there's see on line 32.
32?
Yeah, add a breaks, BR, a couple BRs. Okay, add several, like I don't know, like 4. Save.
Okay.
Go
So
back.
yeah,
There you go. Yeah,
it works.
there was some spacing there. I mean, you can use BRs or you can use margins or padding.
Okay. See. So I have a last question. So okay. Oh, if I use like add assignment here, it
Hmm.
navigate
Yep.
to this one. So okay,
Yeah.
just
Right. So assignment editor, right? Can I see your assignment editor code?
yeah, I do have it. This one.
Yeah. So this, scroll up.
Mhm.
So see you're grabbing the AID on line 8.
Yeah.
Okay. So that AID is a valid ID when you click on a course, right? And then you show up, you display the ID, correct?
Yes.
But if that ID is assignment editor, obviously you're not going to find that course because it doesn't exist, right? So go back to the UI.
Yeah.
Go back to the browser. So okay, so notice if you click on proposal assignment, right? Click on that. Notice the URL says assignments/A101.
Yeah.
Okay, because so that A101 is a valid ID, correct? Now
Yes.
go back to the assignments again. Go back. So now click on plus.
Plus.
Okay, so now the URL says assignment/assignment editor. So assignment editor is not an ID. It's not going to find it, right? So what you need to do is that when you go back to the code.
Go back to the code.
You need to make logic here that says, okay, so if AID AID that you find it, line 9, for instance, or actually no, in the if statement, right? In the if statement, okay, that assignment when you find it, you only should find it in line 9, right? In line 9, you should only do the line 9 only if the AID is not assignment editor.
Okay, so
So you needed like an if statement somehow. Wait a minute. Let me take control. Okay, so you need something like PC.
no. Yeah,
Is this Windows or Mac?
it's Windows. So
Yeah. So wait, my keys are not. I can't undo. Can you do Control Z or whatever to undo?
yeah, so that
Can you undo?
what should I do? Oh, no. No,
Undo.
that's
Edit. Undo. I can't.
Control Z.
Yeah. Undo.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that you would do something like this. You'd say, "Oh, my keyboard is not happy.
Yeah.
I can't control your screen." All right, so you try it. So on line 12,
Okay.
if AID,
Wait, let me just it's like I cannot type
yeah, it's a
here.
bug. It's a Zoom bug. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's like you have to like leave the meeting and then come back. But let me tell you. So in
Okay.
line 12, what you can do is that you can say, if AID, right,
Okay.
is if AID is assignment editor, then the assignment object is going to be an empty object, right, with a default title, a default description, a default, all the default values, right?
Okay.
But else, if the AID is assignment editor, the string. I'm sorry, not the assignment editor. Then you're going to do line 9,
Okay.
where you find the assignment because now you have a valid ID, right? And then you populate the values. Now for that, you'll need to have a local state variables, which I don't see that you have a local state variable. The assignment here, you're just finding it from the array, right? And then you're just using it here locally. But because you need to edit it, actually, how do you edit?
Uh,
I don't
do,
have
do you mean
a
editor or
Yeah. You can you edit? Can you look partial? Can you edit these? Yeah, you can't edit any of these, right? No, not yeah, no, but the text stuff. Can you
no?
edit? Yeah, so that means locally you have to have a state. Go back to the code.
Right here.
Yeah, here you need a state variable called maybe assignment whatever, right? And that so that you can, and if there's an AID, you find the assignment, you set the state variable, and then you can edit the state variable.
Okay, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So, I just want to confirm that this assignment is due next Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Next.
Hey, Professor.
Hi, what's up?
Yeah, I'm doing good. So yeah, I have completed assignment 4. The question that I had was regarding the default value and the value. So I saw the differences in using them, but can you just elaborate on what exactly is the difference between default value and using
Yeah,
value?
default value reads the value from the object and it populates the input field, right? And it allows you to edit it, but then it does that only the first time, right? Reads it, so it does not. So if you want to change the object later, like you reset it, it will not repopulate the input field, right? So that's why like in the to do form, when you click on the edit button,
right? It does not repopulate the form, right? Even though it's changing, the object is changing, the default value doesn't cause a re-rendering of that input field. Same thing for the course. When you're creating a new course,
Yeah.
you create courses, blah, 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 and then you want to edit the course. You click on edit, and it's not populating the input field or the text area, right? Because it's default value. Whereas value is always tied to the latest version of the object. So if the object changes, it causes the input field to repopulate.
Yeah, makes sense, makes sense. Yeah, so this was an issue for the edit assignment, so non-edit assignment, edit
Right. So if you
course.
wanna change it and resubmit,
Mm-hmm.
Fix it so that you don't lose points when it's
Mm-hmm.
graded. Yeah, go ahead. We're not going to penalize you
No, no, I have
resubmitting it.
already fixed it. I have already
Oh,
fixed it,
okay.
and yeah, I just wanted to confirm the differences. But regarding default value, we can still use it in places where, like assignment editor, right?
Yeah,
Wherein
exactly.
we just.
So if it's not going to repopulate,
Mm-hmm.
like we did when you already have an input field
Mm.
and you're changing, as you're clicking, then yeah, you can leave default value.
Okay, yeah. So because for assignment editor, I have used default view, and it was working fine. So I didn't
Yeah,
change. It's fine, right?
for most cases it's fine.
Oh, okay, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. In that case, Professor, just one more thing. We can start assignment 5 now, right? As you said after
Yes,
your
you can.
lecture.
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
sure. Thanks. Have a good night.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Carrie, Sampath, Yash.
Hello, sir.
Hi. What's up?
Just good night. Bye.
Good night. Take care.
Yeah.
Carrie.
Sir, the recording is on, so
Oh, I should stop the recording.